Morning everyone. How are things with you? I can't hear you now, but I ask you anyway. It's still beautiful weather, isn't it? And it's a real blessing at this strange time. I spend a lot of my time in the garden, not working in it, of course, but usually reading, and I do have an occasional glass of beer. And this is my favourite time of year in England. I don't think I'd want to be anywhere else. When I first went to the southern hemisphere of the world, I was looking forward to evenings of nice sunlight and everything, but it always gets dark around 6:30 and 7, and I was so disappointed in that. And that's why I love England at this time. And this time it's a time full of hope and growth, isn't it? And even in these difficult times, there are signs of hope everywhere in the natural world. I have an elder tree in my garden that started out many years ago, and everybody said, "Oh, it's a weed, it's a weed." And it's beautiful right now. It's a big elder tree, and it's in blossom. And later we'll have beautiful elderberries on it. But this year I've decided I'll make some elderflower cordial from the blossom. A couple of years ago I waited for the berries to appear later in the year and made elderberry gin. God's provision is everywhere you look, isn't it? And during this time, when we can't see many people face to face, I've been thinking about the art of listening. We speak on the phone to people, or we text them, or we have a Zoom conference. And I was wondering how it was impacting on our ability to listen. Is it making us listen more? Is it making us listen less? I'm not sure, but it certainly focuses on our ability to listen to each other. In Zoom conferences, people can easily speak over each other at times, not intending to be rude, but it's because they can't properly see physical cues such as body language, because we hear more than with our ears. Anyone who's watching this, who's been married for a number of years, and I've been married for 48 years this year, will know that it's sometimes hard to really listen to your spouse. And it's not because you don't want to, or maybe in some cases you don't. I don't know the state of your relationship, but when you live with someone for a number of years, you get to know them as well as you can know anyone. And so, for instance, I can often predict what Mavorian's going to say, and I can fall into the habit of preempting it, and then, I might lose out on something of importance that she wanted to say. Or I can be busy doing something and I've only half an ear open. And both of these are examples of not listening, but giving the impression that you are. Maybe you'll recognise yourselves in that, especially if you've been married for a number of years. But listening is a form of love. And by listening, we put aside our own agenda. We take a break from what we're doing and we give attention to the other. Because true listening requires selflessness and a certain amount of humility. It's a form of love, and love is good, isn't it, for all relationships? And listening shows you care. Listening shows you want to understand what the other person is experiencing, what the other person is thinking, what the other person is feeling. When someone senses you're not listening to them, and you might have all had this experience, that person is rightfully heard. Not listening gives the message that he or she doesn't count and is not worthy of your time. And conversely, listening shows you care, and that can only strengthen relationships. I always remember some years ago in my work as a social worker, working with a 15-year-old girl called Emily. And she'd been in care for a number of years. She had a very difficult early life, and she'd been moved from one foster home to the another during her time in care, which is often the experience of children in care. And as she was moved from one home to another, her difficult behaviour escalated at each time. And she was now getting involved in prostitution. A 15-year-old getting involved in prostitution, and was about to be moved to a secure unit for her safety. And one day I asked her if there was anything she needed, and she said this. She said, what I needed most was someone to listen to me. Someone who cared enough to listen to me. I learned a few years later that she'd been found dead from a drug overdose at a very young age. Listening shows that you respect people for their insights and their own experience. And just think, if Emily had really been listened to, we might have saved her, and we might have saved others because of her insights. So how do we really listen? Well, we have to listen with our eyes and our body. Body language is of great importance. We really should listen with our whole being, and that takes some real effort. Mavorian's always keen to tell people to look at her when they're in conversation with her, because she feels that they're not listening to her otherwise. And she's right. Have you noticed people's interest in what you're saying wane, and then their eyes change focus to something beyond you? I know when that happens to me, I just want to end the conversation. I haven't got their attention. So we need to connect our eyes, and we need to watch our body language if we want to know, if we want someone to know we're truly listening. And patience is a key when we're listening. We shouldn't be too quick to respond. In the book of James it says, be quick to listen and slow to speak. And we need to curb our desire to interrupt. Don't prompt what they're about to say, because they might not be going to say it. Remember, we need humility. And don't be too quick to give advice. Don't try to finish the other person's thoughts. Because first we need to show the person that we want to understand his or her feelings or the situation. And people do need feedback when you're listening to them. Sometimes called active listening. You ask the person questions about what they've said to clarify that you've really understood them. And that reiterates to the person that you really want to understand, and that you have been truly listening to them. And a big no-no. Don't redirect attention to yourself and make the rest of the conversation about you. I'm sure we all do it, we've all done it. Curb that if we can. And I know in my life, having suffered bouts of serious clinical depression, the people who helped me most were those who listened. Even when I wasn't making much sense, they listened. And perhaps they were comfortable enough to be with me in long silences. Now I found out when I recovered, they told me this, that a lot of people were afraid to visit me because they didn't know what to say to me. But I knew that they didn't really have to say anything, but just listen and sit comfortably in the quiet. And I think good listening, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, also affects our relationship with God. No, not affects, reflex, maybe affects as well. Dietrich Bonhoeffer says that our inability to listen to others may drown out the voice of God. And he quotes, and I quote, "He who can no longer listen well to his brother will soon be no longer listening to God either. He will be doing nothing but prattle in the presence of God too." You see, good listening is a means of grace in true Christian fellowship. Not only is it a channel through which God continues to put his grace into our lives, but it's also his way of using us as a means of grace in the lives of others. And it may be one of the hardest things we learn to do, but it will be worth the ounce of every effort to listen, to truly listen. And I've been talking with Tom for some time about starting a short course that teaches some listening skills. And whilst we can't do that now, hopefully we can do something in the not too distant future. So if you are interested, whether you belong to St Albans or whether you are watching this, you've not attended St Albans, please let either Tom or myself know. It'll be fun too. We make it fun. And well, that's it. That's the end of another thought for today. Not many daft stories in that, really. Anyway, it's really good to speak to you again, even though I can't see you. As I said before, I think of you. Take care of yourself and your loved ones, and stay safe, and God bless. Bye-bye.